I know you're gonna dig this.
Ladies and gents, here we are again. 2016, March 28th. Today is my mother's birthday, by the way. Happy birthday, Mom.
Happy birthday.
We have another Dayton gym. You guys have no idea what kind of chills I get being in the presence of these, just absolute geniuses. And today is no exception. Sir, would you please tell us who you are and what you are in the music industry?
My name is Greg Webster. I was the original drummer and one of the original members of the Ohio Players. We started our group back in 1964. And what it is, I have a book out called The Early Years of the Ohio Players. And in that book, you'll see a lot of stuff that people didn't know that the Ohio Players went through during their progression up until where they are today. And so therefore there's some things in there that a lot of people might want to know about and want to read about.
Now, give me a little history, like I don't know, on the Dayton funk sound in the groups that came from out of here, besides the icon Ohio Players.
You mean the other groups that came out?
The other groups and the general funk sound that you guys, birthed.
Well, believe it or not, as far as the funk sound goes, the one thing I regret about that is there was no one back there then to record us, either by visual or sound. No tape recordings or anything.
Wow.
Because back then, we were so funky, there was only about maybe 3 other bands in the country that was funkier than what we were then. And that was James Brown and his group, and the Upsetters with Little Richard. Because I know I played with the group in Cincinnati for a minute, and the Upsetters came to town at one of the convention places, and all the clubs closed down until after they left. And like with our group, we had such a funk thing going that, believe it or not, we played in Cleveland, Ohio, at a place called I'll get the name in a minute.
We'll come
But
back.
anyway, while we were playing there, we was on the show with Chuck Jackson, the OJs, and ourselves. And we was doing a tribute to James Brown. And what we didn't know was that James Brown was sitting in the aisle in the audience at the same time. And we opened up the show with we had practice with James Brown live at the Apollo. And we had a singer back then named Bobby Brown. At least his name was Edmund Whedon, but we called him Bobby Brown because he looked so much like James Brown. He danced like James Brown. When his wife who was his seamstress, made him clothes, they was exactly what James Brown would wear. And so what happened is that we would start the show off with playing Night Train, James Brown Night Train. And Bobby would come out on the stage and yell, and then go into the James Brown skate and dance. And then when he got about halfway through the song, we would stop and go, bam, dun, 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 dun. And he would say, "This is a man's world." And with James Brown sitting right in the audience, the women would scream and holler and everything else. They couldn't believe it. And we went on and finished our show. And then the OJs came out and did theirs. And then when Chuck Jackson got ready to do his, he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, this young man's protege was, believe it or not, Mr. James Brown." And James, would you stand up and take a bow? And he did. And matter of fact, he said, "Won't you come up on stage for us?" And James came up on stage and did 2 songs to prove that he was the real James Brown. Boy, you talking about making us feel good? We knew it. We knew what we had.
Well, we're going to go off script for a minute. This is something I usually don't do, but I definitely want to know. How did you guys hook up with each other to form the Ohio Players?
Well, everybody almost knows this. Marshall, Satch, and Pee Wee, they were once part of Robert Ward's Ohio Untouchables. And like I got it in my book that says when Robert fired them, and like I was playing with another group in Dayton. And so when I heard that Robert had fired him, I went to try to join him, see if I can play drums for him. And I met Pee Wee. And Pee Wee said, well, him, Marshall, and Satch wanted to form a group, and they needed a drummer and a guitar player. And I said, well, I know a guitar player, and I'd be willing to go. I said, his name is Sugarfoot, and he was playing over to another club in Dayton. And so Pee Wee went over to talk to him, and Sugar told him no. But the thing was that I knew Sugar. Matter of fact, I sort of helped raise him, because when I first met him, he was about 17 years old, and we were both living in Hamilton, Ohio at the time. And so therefore, I convinced him to come up to join the group. He was really reluctant though, and reasons why is in the book. But he was reluctant, and so what I did, I would drive from Hamilton, Ohio to Cincinnati, pick up Sugarfoot, bring him to Dayton for practice, drive back to Cincinnati, go to Hamilton, change clothes, and come back to Dayton to play with this group I was playing with up here at the time. And then we would do this for about a month, practice and everything. And that's how we ended up getting the group together.
Now, please tell me, why hasn't this sound been celebrated years ago? And why is it taking so long for my fellow Daytonians to catch on to our uniqueness to the music industry?
Well, believe it or not, it's been there for a while. We've had some great musicians come out of Dayton.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, you had guys that played with the Count Basie Band, a guy named Booty Woods. You had guys that played on the, not the Ed Sullivan, but at that time it was one of the Tonight Show.
With Johnny
he
Carson?
He was a trumpet player. He only played on the Tonight Show.
That was my uncle.
Snooky
Young.
Well, I mean, Snooky
Young was my uncle.
See, we've had a lot of great musicians that came out of Dayton, but they never was, pronounced until all of a sudden we start making what they would call rock and roll blues and stuff like that. Because now, I'll say this, as far as the funk, Robert Ward had blues and he was sort of funky with his blues, but we changed the style all the way around to a funk style. And believe it or not, a lot of groups start trying to follow our interpretation of the funk. And believe it or not, the only reason we became really recognized is because we made this one song called, at the time, Pain. Now, if you listen to Pain, the words weren't really funky. They were just words putting on top of a funky groove we used to play when we would come back on stage from our intermission. We would play this funky groove, and the people would get up and dance and everything to it. But the thing is, when we went to the studio, I didn't want an instrumental on the album. So Junie, who was the lead vocalist at the time, he was in the studio recording, overdubbing some songs. And I told him when we came to this, I didn't want no instrumental, and I wanted him to put some words on it. And I told him the kind of words I thought, should go on. So when they played it back, the first thing he said was Pain, and then they started from there. But if you listen to the music, you find out it was really a part of the funk thing that we was doing, the way it would change all the way through the song.
Well, some of us are the mindset that, it ain't funky without the drummer. If the drummer ain't funky, it ain't funk.
Well, I don't know about that. I
Because you're modest.
Yeah, I made up some different variations as I went along.
Yes, you did.
Things I thought about, grooves and things. So
an innovator.
You might call it that.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll call it that. Yeah, you were an innovator to the funk.
All right.
Yeah, and what folks also don't realize, my fellow Funketeers, this is a modest man. When they formed the Players, were you not voted to be the leader of the band?
Yeah, when we first started. And like I said, it's all in my book because we had to pick a leader, and they decided that because I had led other bands before I joined the Players, and they voted me to ask me if I wanted to be the leader, and I told them, yeah, I've had some experience, so they made me the leader. And I was the leader of the group from the time it started in 1964 until I left in 1973.
Now, the sound was defining at the time, and it's still sort of used today. You know how they've been sampling and, you know, all this new music. But like the Wright brothers, again, people don't know that funk music may have originated, or this would have been the hotbed, especially at the peak of its genre. So what does you attribute that to?
That right now is just becoming popular?
Well, not that it's just becoming popular, that people don't realize that funk music, you know, may have been birthed here in the city of Dayton, but they're still using it today in our samples. Either they're sampling it, or they're using, you know, the drum beats that you would have created back in the day, and they're just putting new music on top of it.
True. Matter of fact, I'll tell you a perfect example. In the movie that just came out, straight out of Stockton and straight out of Compton.
Compton, right?
The very first song that what's the name sang on that
That's right.
thing
That's right.
was the Funky Worm.
That's right.
If anybody listened, that was the Funky Worm. That was the very first song on that movie.
Now, do you use social media?
Do I use it?
Yeah, do you use social media?
No.
You don't. Now, so you know we're trying to build a museum.
True.
And we're going to work on the social media. What we're going to do is I'm going to find a way to have you embrace me so we can put you on the social media platform for not only to push this book, because everyone needs to buy a copy of this and read this, because it's a fascinating read.
Right. Well, let me say this. Right now, as far as the book goes, the only way they could possibly get it is on Amazon.com.
Yes,
it's
sir.
on there.
Yes. So folks remember that.
It's on Amazon.com. It's called The Early Years, The Ohio Players. And then in about a month, I'll have some regular copies that I can sell myself. And I'm going to try to get them in different distributions around the city and everything.
Well, again, you know, we're building a museum here, right?
Yes.
Now, what are your thoughts on us building or trying to build a funk museum here in the city of Dayton?
Well, I can understand that because we have a lot of groups that came out of Dayton that were really funky. Roger, Heatwave, a lot of these groups were really funky, even though, you know, some of them may not consider that, but you listen to their grooves and the way they sound, they really have a good funk sound. And the thing is, that should have been known a long time ago. But the thing is, Dayton was a little slow in doing that. They're a little slow in doing a lot of things, but the thing is, too, you got to remember that Dayton was not really for blacks. Dayton was basically for whites and almost still is. And the thing is, right now, they'd rather have somebody like the Wright brothers up front than have somebody like a musical group up front. Because to them, musical groups don't bring in a lot of money. They don't bring in the tourists. Believe it or not, when I first started playing music, I tried to get a loan at a bank, and they told me, well, if you wasn't making something, buying something, selling something, you couldn't get a penny. Now they're begging the musicians to come because the musicians are making so much money. They're begging them to come in. So that shows you how things have changed.
Yeah, well, we're going to make sure that the museum is at the forefront of the tourist industry, and, you know, we want the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center to do the same thing for the city of Dayton that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame did for the city of Cleveland.
I can understand that.
Well, then you tell me, why does the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center belong in Dayton?
Well, I think it should be in Dayton because, as they say, most of the funk probably started here in Dayton with us. And then people outside, groups outside of Dayton listen to our sound because we traveled quite a bit before we recorded. and people would come to see us play and was wondering, wow, who's this group from Dayton? Because they never heard anything like that. Matter of fact, we went to Detroit, Michigan, and we saw while we were up there, we were introduced to a lot of the Motown people and everything. And when everybody saw our show, they couldn't believe it because that's the first time they seen a group or had a group that sounded like that.
Yeah, you were innovators. No one was doing what you guys were doing. All right, so we're going to interject. We're going to show everyone. Can you explain what this picture is and who some of the members are?
Well, that's the original Ohio players. That was Sugarfoot, Pee Wee, Satch, Marshall, and myself. We were the original Ohio players, and we had a lead singer, a fellow named Bobby Brown, and we changed lead singers all through. But the main one was Bobby Brown. I have a picture of him in my book and everything. But the thing is, though, with him, he did all kind of James Brown. He did all kind of Wilson Pickett. He did everything. But he was so funky with it that it just went on.
So that was one of the first pictures taken of the group? Can we say?
Yeah, that was it. That was one of the very first pictures taken of the group.
So then we move forward through the hippie era, and then we come up with my fave of all time.
Now, that group there, that was this group that recorded for Westbound. They did all the Westbound recording. That
Same
right
members
there.
from the other picture.
All right. On that picture, you have Norman Napier, who we nicknamed Bruce. You have Marvin Pierce. You got Pee Wee that's underneath Marvin. You got Satch on top. You got Sugarfoot standing kneeling underneath him. Right next to him is Marshall. Then you got Junie, and then you got myself.
Amazing. One last picture. One of our favorites around here.
Oh,
Please
boy.
tell us about this one.
The Ohio Players albums from Westbound. Matter of fact, from what I was told, those albums were the one that did everything.
Everything.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we all had this in our rooms. If we didn't, if nothing else, we had the 45s to the hits that would have came off of this album.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about this. This interview is only 30, so we're going to have you back. Oh,
Okay.
Mr. Webster, we definitely got to get you back because we're going to talk about some other things that are music related.
Okay.
But right now, again, this is the Funk Center,
Right.
so we're trying to keep our emphasis on, creating this museum for
Exactly.
musicians such as yourself and all the other gems that came up out this city. We're going to let people know. Now, do you have a role in the organization?
Do I have a role in what organization?
In the Funk Center? Do you have a role in the Funk Center?
No.
I mean, we talk off camera about maybe coming up with something where we can support you and you can support our efforts.
Sure, I'd like to do that.
Now, what is your fondest memory of playing with the Ohio Players?
I found this memory.
Yeah.
Oh wow, there were so many.
I know it's a ton of them. That's why I was sort of reluctant on asking the question, but our listeners and our people who follow us on YouTube, that's the one thing they love. They love learning about you, the individual, and just taking a little piece out of your life. So, what was your fondest memory?
Well,
or more than one?
Okay, that's were two of them. One was that when we did Soul Train, that was one of the things that I liked. And then the other one is when we were, like we said, we were at Leo's Casino. That's the name of that club in
Cleveland. Okay.
Leo's Casino. And that was a big nightclub for blacks, like Ray Charles and everybody else appeared there. And Temptations, everybody. And when we appeared there twice. One with Bobby Ham, who made Betty's Got a New Pair of Shoes, the Old Jays, and ourselves. And then the second time there, we was there with the Old Jays, Chuck Jackson, and ourselves. Oh, here's something too that a lot of people don't know. That the Ohio Players was the backup group for the Old Jays for a whole year. And that's the only group the Ohio Players ever played backup to. We were backup for the Old Jays for a whole year, and that back then they had 5 members in the group.
Okay.
Today they only know them with 3, but they had 5 members in the group back then. And like I said, back then, when we did that show and James Brown had to come on the show and dance and sing to prove who he was, that was the big thing.
Well, we're going to take it back a little further, and we're going to come back to the present.
Okay.
Who were some of your musical influences as a drummer?
Mine?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, I'm sorry. Let me stop you. Did you take drum lessons in school, or is it just something that just came naturally to you?
Well, it came naturally, and I did take drum lessons. Matter of fact, I started off when I was 4 years old. My dad gave me a field drum to beat around on because he got tired of hearing me beating around on my mom's pots and pans while music is playing on the radio. And so he bought me a field drum. And believe it or not, when I was in the 6th grade of school, he brought me up here to Dayton because I was living in Hamilton at that time. Me, Sugarfoot, Roger, and all of us, we all lived in Hamilton, Ohio. And he brought me up here to what they call the teenage thing that they had at the, where was that place on 5th Street? Classic Ballroom.
Okay.
And so what happened, he brought me here and the drummer didn't show up. So he knew I'd been, banging on drums, on the drums and everything. So he told me to take a pair of brushes and just keep time. Don't do anything, just keep time. And when it was over with, he gave me $6. I was a pro.
So that's when your career started?
That's when it
At the
started.
age of 13, 14, you said 6th grade?
In the 6th grade.
Right, so you were 13 or 14,
About
wow.
that. And then when I went to high school, I ended up taking lessons in high school. And believe it or not, I won all-state for drumming while I was in high school. My dad kept a picture and everything of it.
Oh, we've got to get that.
Yeah,
well, then
well-
who were your influences? Who would you say you patterned your style after?
My biggest influence that I wanted to sound like was a guy named Louis Bellson.
Oh, yeah.
Because Louis
Ella's
Bellson,
man.
I heard him play a song with Duke Ellington called Some Kind of Sweet. And on that particular song, he played 2 bass drums. And when I heard that, boy, it just made my mind blow up.
Louis was
And believe it or not, when I started with the players, I started playing 2 bass drums. That's what I wanted to do, play 2 bass drums. But then I saw it was too much junk to carry, so I dropped down to 1.
Louis Bellson, boy, that's a blast from the past.
Uh-huh.
Now, lastly, like we were saying, you gave us your 2 fondest memories, and you've expressed an interest in possibly helping, the TheFunkCenter,
Right.
promote a museum here in the city of Dayton. And like we were saying also, you actually took lessons, which is another component that we're bringing to the TheFunkCenter, is we're going to bring musical instruction back to our inner city children.
Okay.
Would that be something that you would be interested in being a master class teacher?
If I can find the time now, let me say this too, in regards to that. Because of playing with so many groups that didn't know how to read, I really lost the ability to read fast and play. For instance, this Booty Woods I was telling you about, they used to play with Count Basie. We used to play with a guy in Dayton called, I can't think of his name, played trumpet. Anyway, he had a band, a 6-piece orchestra, a 9-piece orchestra. And Booty would always come and play with us. Buddy Webb, that's his name. Buddy Webb.
Yeah.
And I played with him off and on almost 10 years. And so Booty would come in town one day and he said, Greg, Count's looking for a drummer. And he said, man, won't you try for it? Because I could play everything Count basically did, but I had memorized it. I didn't use paper. And I told him, I said, man, I don't know if I can read that fast and play it. And I never tried out for it. But he thought I could because the way I was playing it, he thought I knew this stuff. But that's what happened. My reading ability died down. Want me to keep on?
Yeah, so there was a group in town.
Yeah, matter of fact, there's a big band in town, a guy named Eddie Brookshire. And I used to play with him every now and then, but my ability to read, I couldn't keep up with him. And so I had to drop out of that. And like right now, I'm not playing anymore at all because I got trouble with my legs. I tried to play about 3 years ago. And when I got it from playing, I couldn't even hard drive home because my legs hurt so bad. And I was playing in church for a while, but then when I would quit playing and go, I had to sit in the car for about 10, 15 minutes before my legs get good enough where I can go ahead and drive home. So I had to give up playing drums.
Well, the thing about being an instructor or, just heading a class,
Right.
it's more about you. I mean, children need to understand who you are.
Right.
So that when they hear these songs, they can now start connecting you with Pain and the Funky Worm and understanding that here's a Dayton gem who's a music icon. Music icon. And if you take the time and really, really work on your craft,
Right.
sky's the limit.
Right. I can still, yeah, matter of fact, I still, every now and then I can sit down and go through my books and all that kind of stuff. I know how to teach, I could teach if it's necessary come to that.
Well, it wouldn't be, not that it's necessary, but we would love to just have you, so again, so that children
Right.
can understand who you are.
Okay.
Because I find it amazing. I guarantee you, my grandchildren and all my little nieces and nephews are going to find it amazing too. Mr. Webster. Wow. It's been an amazing interview.
I just want to say a couple of things for you, Mr. Webster. This album right here, we're going to hand it to. Tell us a little bit more about that album right here.
Well, now, the thing is, you got pictures on this album of the new Ohio players.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know nothing about them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anything about them. This is after I left the group 3,
Mm-hmm.
when they switched from Westbound and went to make, went over to, I don't know if it was a restaurant or where.
Mm-hmm.
That's them.
Mm-hmm.
So that picture you got them, those are the group, those are the people that we did all the Westbound recording.
Mm-hmm.
I think they put them pictures on there because at that time after they made Skin Tight and all that, they became so popular that everybody thought of them.
Mm-hmm.
The only time they seen that picture right there, that one, the other one, nobody's seen that one hardly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that color one, the only time they seen that was on Unsung.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time they seen that picture was on Unsung.
Tell us about Unsung. There's a lot of things you wanted to say about Unsung that they kind of slighted and missed you out of. Tell us about it.
That was basically what we were saying today. Some of the things I wanted to say, like about, they say on there where Sugarfoot was the one that did this. Sugarfoot wasn't the one that did it. Matter of fact, Sugarfoot almost didn't come. Because if I hadn't begged him, because like I said, I helped raise Sugarfoot.
Right.
Me and my first wife, been married 4 times, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
But me and my first wife used to take him skating every Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to take him with me to listen to this guy, Lonnie Mack, that I played with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he began to get interested in music. And so, when I took him to hear Lonnie Mack, he was trying to play harmonica. And then he watched Lonnie playing, and as a matter of fact, he watched Lonnie more than he watched Robert Ward, because he liked the way Lonnie played. And so when I left Lonnie and went on the road with some other guys, when I came back, he was trying to play a guitar with a group called the Blues Bees out of Cincinnati. And when I came back, him and I got together. I tried to play upon my drums, tried to play organ, and I got him to play guitar, and I had another drummer. So the thing was and then that's why I knew I could convince him to come, because we had been together for so long and knew everything. Because what he said was that when Pee Wee and them would call him to take Robert's place, because he didn't sing. As a matter of fact, he only sang 3 songs for us in 10 years. He'd only sing 3 songs for us in 10 years. He wouldn't sing. But all of a sudden, matter of fact, when I heard Skin Tight, and I said, who in the hell is that? And they said, that's sure. I said, no, it ain't. I couldn't believe it was him, because we couldn't get him to sing nothing. Not nothing. And then and he said that because of what happened when he would go and play for them because of Robert would call him back. And they said, okay, so they went back to Robert, and he'd be without a job. And he was talking, and he told me that one year they did that, and it was in January. And he had to hitchhike back to Cincinnati. And he said he was lucky because on his way down there, what's his name? Coltrane, John Coltrane, and his group was on their way to Cincinnati to do a gig and picked him up and took him home. Said, but he didn't want to be bothered with him no more. He didn't want to have nothing to do with him because he didn't trust him, he didn't believe him, he didn't want nothing to do. But I had to convince him to come. And Soul Train tried to make that like he was the big thing, he was the big thing. And another thing too, and sometimes it bothers me, that after those guys got known,
Right.
my name never showed up anywhere. Never showed up anywhere on anything. And as far as they're concerned, matter of fact, if you look at the when they showed on the music on TV, they played the songs on TV. They had the name up there that Satchel started the Ohio Players. No. Matter of fact, when they voted on this is in the book, because when they started voting, when we started voting for people to be leader of the group, I said, no, I elect Satch to be a group, and people in Marshallville said, F no. Said he can't even lead his own self. He don't never show up for work on time, and half the time he don't never get in. No, we don't want him as no leader. And that's how I end up becoming. You know, they somebody said, well, Greg, why don't you try? And I said, okay. But people don't know this happened. See, they don't know the real story of how it got started. And we went through a lot of trials and tribulations, like most groups do. But I mean, we went through some real, big things while we was doing it.
Now, I understand, you were sick and Jimmy replaced you. What was your feelings about that?
Well, I was hurt. But the thing was, in a way, I felt like, you hear about companies today where the president of a corporation is voted out by the board of directors.
Right.
I said, that's what happened to me. Because what happened is that we built the group up to where it was, instead of us 5, it got up to 8 members. And therefore, if the majority decided to vote the president out, then they elect a new one. And that's what they did. So they voted me out. And like I said on Unsung, they needed a drummer that could sing. I can't sing. And so that was a good move from them as far as I'm concerned.
Did you think that was an excuse?
No, but I mean, there was other things, along with it, but I didn't detail them in the book, and I'm not going to detail them now.
Okay. Anything else the people should know about Greg Webster, the original drummer from the Ohio Players, that you can tell your audience that was in your heart and soul that you want to tell, that you want to say, hey, I'm the guy who was behind Ohio Players. A lot of people don't know this. I was the leader. Anything else you want to say?
Well, yeah, because I had to make a lot of decisions for the group. I had to make a lot of decisions. In other words, I wouldn't make, I would ask them, if they wanted to go along, but some of the decisions I had to make on my own. I had to do a lot of things on my own. A lot of them they got mad about, but basically I was the one that had to go talk to I was like the leader and the manager. I had to go and book the group. I had to go out and make phone calls. I had to go do all this kind of stuff, and then try to keep the group together and everything. And I got to say this: that group, when the 5 of us were together, the first 5, that was a tight-knit group. You don't have groups like that no more. In other words, you can't go out and ask nobody to, hey, will you come and join the group because we got to practice? No. Matter of fact, when I come in with my instrument, you're going to pay me or I'm not playing. That's the attitude that most musicians have today, which is why they can't build any good groups anymore. Because nobody wants to take the time to practice and learn. They all think they're too good, so they just want to jump in there and get paid right away for something.
Well, Mr. Webster, it's been a pleasure. Pleasure. We're looking for round 2
All right.
because we'll be back.